Let's see how that experimental raisin wine tastes.
So yeah, this is our raisin wine. We started this July 21st of 2020 and bottled it on February 18th of 2020. Today's the 24th, so it's been bottled for like a week, but that means this is July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. It's about 7 months old. A lot of people were asking about it, and this was just basically a joke. There's been so much talk about our raisins nutrients, and you know what? The truth is, they're really not a great nutrient. They're just really not.
But that wasn't what we were going for at all. We were
No,
just
it
going
really
for,
wasn't.
could you make a wine from raisins?
Right.
And the answer is yes.
Now, does it taste good? That's the second part to everything. Like, can you do it and should you do it are the two things that a lot of people want to know. So, you know what? Let's just find out. Let's pour some, shall we? It's hard to not notice that color. It's just pretty intense. It really looks like whiskey to me, or like a Bochet. Wait a minute. Being a gentleman. All right.
So yeah, it is super dark and super clear. So that's super awesome.
Can you get the word super in there even one more time?
Tried.
It's got this lovely red caramely color. It really does look like whiskey or a brandy. It just really does have that. It just looks so rich the way it is. Onto the aroma, though. This is where this one's incredible.
Its aroma is as potent as its color would suggest.
It smells like brandy.
It's super, like, punch you in the face with all these different
Yeah.
flavors.
I'm going to call this poor man's brandy because that's what this is. This is poor man's brandy. Somebody's going to ask me what the alcohol content is. We don't actually know because we don't know what it started as. But I do know that I use bread yeast for this, which usually ends around 12, but has gone as high as 15%. I'm going to bet this is probably somewhere between 12 and 15%. I really doubt it went higher. And honestly, for homebrew, that's pretty much close enough. So,
Now, throughout this process, the one thing that keeps coming to mind for me has been Bochet.
Yeah.
And there's no honey in this, but
yeah, there's no honey.
for some reason, the essence that I'm getting from those raisins just makes me think of caramel or
Yeah.
the cooked honey
It
or
really does have that. It's not smoky, but it has that cooked thing going.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have the smokiness of a Bochet, but it has the caramelization of a Bochet. And I have to attribute that to the dried raisins, which are, dried, which means caramelized, sort of.
But I
kind of.
think I've used the term smoky before because it just, there's like so many different visuals that come from this aroma, and I think about s'mores and the campfire and
Yeah, it smells awesome, okay? That's the easiest way to say this. It smells amazing. It has an intense aroma too. Like
Yeah.
it's a strong
Yeah,
aroma.
you-
Sometimes you have to dig to smell things.
you don't have to
Not
dig.
this.
It's coming
If
for
you notice, I usually stick my nose right in the glass, not with this one. You don't have to. Although when I do. Okay, now if you notice, I'm moving from left to right and right to left because your different nostrils will actually get different smells sometimes. I'm getting the slightest hint of citrus, and I get the fruit of the grape. Just a touch of it, because that's what raisins are, But I get just a touch of the fruit of the grape.
Yeah.
The smell is sweet without being sickly. It's actually, it's intense is the easiest way to describe it. That kind of cooking sugar with a little bit of a fruit and just the tiniest hint of like orange citrus. That's what I'm getting off of this.
Yeah.
It's really, really aromatic.
All right, short sip time.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot. You want to go first?
So the short sip is, I think, crucial for this beverage because its color and its aroma are reflected in the flavor. It's potent stuff.
It's intense.
And so it's got so much going on that if you've eaten something just before or drank something just before and then you come to this, it's just kind of like a shock to the system because it's got so much going on and it's so potent that short sip, you need some time to acclimate and to
Yeah.
bring yourself to the level of this beverage.
I'm going to do 2 short sips just because.
So on my first short sip, I was getting almost like a sour, bitter thing, but it was hard to describe because it was just like a shock to the senses where you're just like, what is this? I don't know. And then, of course, I always have problems taking short sips because my mind is like, no, we want to explore. No, you have to swallow. Ah.
That really does happen.
It does.
Yeah.
It's sad.
My short sip, similar idea. There was the intensity of it when it first entered. Then it went a little bit to the bitter, then a sweetness as it went down, which is unusual. Usually the bitter is at the end. This time the sweetness was on the finish. So I took a second short sip just to see if I would get the same reaction. It wasn't quite as intense coming in. It was a little sweeter coming in. The bitter wasn't so bitter. It was more pleasant, and the sweet was still there on the end. Now, as I recall, this came out rather on the dry side. It was not totally dry, but it was rather dry, like 1.010 or so. So it's semi-sweet. It tastes sweeter than you would think, probably because of all the fruitiness in there. By the way, we made something dry the other day, and it had fruit in it. It was a fey wine.
Yep.
And somebody said, I've always found that fruits, or somebody told me one time that fruits need a little bit of sugar, because did you ever taste a fruit without sugar? And I was like, never thought about it from that perspective before, but they're right. Basically, dry fruit doesn't taste right. So you need a little bit of sweetness with the fruit, is what they were getting at. I totally messed up the delivery of that. But you get what I was trying to say.
So while Brian was talking about that, I thought about what he was saying, and I was noticing a different sensation that continues the parallel between whiskeys and bourbons and brandies and all those good yummy things. Is that I was kind of getting that warming sensation that you get sometimes when you drink those.
Maybe this is a little higher alcohol then.
But it wasn't in my head so much as in my stomach.
Yeah, that's the alcohol. That's
And
ethanol.
so I took another sip, and I was definitely getting more of those sweet notes because I got used to the bitter
Right.
shock thing. But the aftertaste was still a little harsh. So now that I'm ready to take my long exploratory sip, which is my favorite part, I will explore those avenues further.
All right, long sip. This is where you take a sip and you leave it in your mouth for a few seconds and explore it. I'm going first. All right, this just coats your mouth. It's like just gets in there, and it's totally that caramelized sugar, like a caramel or caramel, however you like to say it. I say caramel because that's where I'm from. That flavor with hints of the grape and the fruitiness and a little, citrus. Did we even put citrus in this? But it's coming through. I get almost a plum rather than a grape, though. It's a deeper, darker fruit, and it's not overly sweet. Like doesn't come through as sweet, but it doesn't come through with the dry tannic qualities either. In this case, the tannins and the sweetness are like just neck and neck. They're balanced with each other so nicely that it just works. And then the finish, it kind of stays with you, and it's got that a little bit of tannin, so there's a little bit of pucker, but the flavor of the plum is what stays with me. So it's a very pleasant aftertaste, very pleasant finish.
Yeah, up front, I'm getting that sweetness, but it's not like, whoa, I'm sweet. It's more of that subtle honey sweetness,
Yeah,
if that
yeah,
makes
it
sense.
kind of comes through like honey.
Rather than a sugary, syrupy sweetness. And then it goes right into the fruit notes, and it's definitely fruit, but what type of fruit? I can't really put my finger on it. And as Brian was saying, it's not so much grape, it's plum. I think it's a combination of the dark fruits. That if you just took all the dark fruits and threw them in a blender, that would be what that was. And then I do get that puckering and the weird but pleasant and balancing mouthfeel that you get from tannins. And this was made from raisins, so
Yeah.
there's going to be tannins in there.
Lots of tannins. They added a ton of flavor.
Yeah, it is.
The flavor level on this is like 3 times higher than most wines and meats.
It's very unique. It's very different, but I would say if I were to compare this to something else we've brewed, I would say it's a combination of our Bochet and our date wine.
Yes.
Those two had a baby, it would
Yes.
be this.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. That's a really good analogy. I agree. So, would you cook with this? Drink it with food? I mean,
I could see if we were still big into baking, soaking a bread
yeah,
or something.
like this would make an awesome rum cake or
a raisin wine cake.
yeah. As far as drinking this with food, oh yeah, I could pour some of this and have it with pretty much any heavy, rich food. I mean, anything that was heavy and rich. If you put this with something light, not going to work. It's going to overpower it. But a heavy, rich food, a steak. I mean, most things go with
A
steak,
stew,
let's be honest.
even.
Yeah, this is, think like primitive, go stew, steaks, even like chicken, like a broiled chicken. This would go really well with like lamb and things like that are a little stronger in flavor.
Probably even most game.
Yeah, like if you were going to have venison or something like
Yeah.
that, sausage, things like that, this would go incredibly well with. Your richer, heavier foods, not so much light stuff. Like if you were going to do a cheese plate with pepperonis and salamis, this would be the thing to drink with that because it'll keep up and it'll help cut some of the fat.
Yeah.
As far as cooking with it, other than some baked goods, I don't know that I'd cook with it, but that's not really a shock to it or
Sure.
a hurt. It's just a
I mean,
usage.
maybe put it in the stew.
Yeah, you could. I could see this going into like a corned beef and cabbage even, because like you could use whiskey or a beer in there.
Yeah.
This could maybe work. Or even in a chili, I think this might work. That little bit of sweetness hit could work. As far as putting this in a mug and drinking it,
I can see a small amount, like as an
Yeah.
aperitif.
I have something to say on that. To me, this reads more like a whiskey or a brandy than a wine.
Yeah.
I can totally
Yeah.
see me taking what I normally would put in my whiskey glass, taking my whiskey glass with an ice ball and pouring some of this in there and enjoying the heck out of that.
Yeah.
Because it's so much like a whiskey or a brandy. It's got that intensity of flavor. It's so aggressively strong in flavor that you can enjoy it longer by taking smaller sips. And you don't have to drink a lot of it.
No.
It's a sipper rather than a chugger.
I think a full glass full, like a wine glass full of this would be
Could overdo it.
a little too much.
But I like that because that's really cool.
Yeah.
Here's something that's
It'll last longer.
yeah. Well, also you drink a little bit less, put it on ice. Like for me, this is great because there's not a lot of sugar in this,
Sure.
and there's not going to be a lot of alcohol by the time it dilutes down, and I don't have to drink as much. So it's
Yeah.
actually a great beverage
Yeah.
for this time. It is that dreaded time for you, the numbers. Okay, so here's the way this works. We're going to give a score from 1 to 10. 1 means we don't like it at all and it could possibly be dangerous and I wouldn't give it to my worst enemy. 5 means I like it. I would drink this. This is something I would drink. 10 means it's absolutely perfect as is and there's no room for improvement. Now, that's hard to do because there's always going to be room for improvement. But what we want to say is I wouldn't change a thing. I would make this exactly like this the next time I made it. So that's the basis for a 10, okay? I'm thinking. I'm not sure. Like, I want more, but I don't want more. No, I'm going to have a little bit more. You want some more?
A little bit.
Pour you a little bit.
For science.
Yeah, this is just for science. There's no other reason. Yeah, you can have a little more.
What number are you?
As I drink this, I would guess the alcohol level is closer to the 15 mark or higher, if possible. It just tastes like I get the alcohol flavor from it, and definitely the scent is carrying that. So it's got to be, in the upper teens for alcohol. Yeah, I'm going to guess at least 15. I'm thinking of a score. I'm between 2. And I'm going based off of things that we've made recently. But the problem is, this reads to me more like a whiskey than a wine. So if I was to judge this as something that I would put on ice and sip slowly over a couple hours, I give it 1 score. If I would put this in a glass and have it with dinner, I give it another score.
The more I'm drinking it, the more I'm getting that drier wine finish.
Yeah. It's pleasant. I like it.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I'm going to give 2 scores. My first score will be judging it as a wine as it is, and then I'll give my other score.
Okay.
You ready?
Sure.
1, 2, 3,
7.
8. You went lower. You get to go first.
Well, if I was allowed leniency, I would say this is a 7 to an 8.5.
See, that's where I'm at too.
I like this and I appreciate it on its own merits, but would I, as
Oh,
the
yeah.
Derica, go and say, give me some of that raisin wine? Maybe.
I can see
sort of.
that.
It's not really, as Brian likes to say, my wheelhouse, but for what it is, I appreciate it, and I don't know what I would do to change it. Because there's so many cool things about it that I just think it's just a unique little creation of mad sciencery that,
It
hey,
was really easy too.
it's all good. So that's why I gave it a 7.
I went 8. Now, I went 8 based on it being a wine and treating it like something that I would treat as a wine, putting it in a glass and having it with dinner or with food of some kind. And I might even be able to go 7.5 on that because it's good. And as Derica was saying that, I was like, oh yeah, would I actually reach for this over other things? Maybe, maybe not. So I might have to retract and go to 7.5. But the news gets better. I do feel this is really nice and it's heady and it's strong. And that's why if I think of this as a whiskey, I give it a 9 because I would totally put this with an ice ball in my whiskey glass and drink it that way. And it's a whole different experience and a whole different beverage.
Right. And I think the key word there is experience. This is an experience.
Oh, yeah.
And there's lots of whiskeys that we really enjoy because they are an experience.
But you
They
don't want
aren't-
to drink 5 ounces of them.
They aren't like something that you're like, oh, I want to drink this. It's more of I want that experience.
Right.
And I know that probably sounds really odd,
I think we sound really odd in general. People just think we're weird.
but there's some things that you like to drink because they're pleasant and you don't have to think about it. It's just like,
Right.
oh, that's a nice drink.
This isn't one of those.
This is an experience.
Yeah.
So there's some thought process put in there. There's some exploration to be done, and sometimes I appreciate that. And
Now, you said you don't know what you would do to make this different, and I'm trying to think of that myself. The best things that I could possibly do is add a little bit of spices to it. Maybe a touch of clove, maybe more citrus if there's any citrus in it. I might add a
Yeah.
little bit of a citrus hit to it. Not a lot, just a little bit. Cinnamon would actually enhance this, I think, nicely. Yeah, cinnamon and clove and a little bit of orange I think would take this up to that level, and this would be such an amazing, it'd be like an old-fashioned in a glass almost.
which would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So that could bring this up that next level. And it's, guys, it's just raisins, water, and yeast. I mean, seriously, it was the simplest thing ever to make. If you decide to do it, and you watch our first videos on it, use a larger fermenter than you think.
They swell.
Or soak your raisins first and you'll see how much you have. We made a 1-gallon batch, ended up with like this much. Okay, there's just not that much left. So it's a good thing that you don't want to drink a lot of it at a time because there's not a lot of it. But anyway, if you like this video, look up. There's another one up there. You might like that one too.